Welcome back to Relax and Calm Down. This is our 4th episode,
Oh, wow.
and today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people are dealing with,
Yeah.
burnout.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We're going to explore that, and we're also going to look at work-life balance,
Yeah.
that elusive state of harmony we all crave.
It's a really important topic and timely, I think.
It is.
And there's so much information out there about it.
Yeah.
You know, from experts like Laurie Santos, who's a Yale psychologist, to organizations like PushFar and Resilient Roots Psychotherapy.
Absolutely. So many resources.
Yeah.
We've been going through a lot of those resources.
Right.
And we're going to distill it down to some of the key takeaways for you today.
Yeah.
So starting with the basics, what exactly is burnout?
Right.
Why does it seem to be so prevalent these days? And most importantly, what can we do about it?
Well, I think before we jump into solutions,
Right.
it's really important to understand what burnout actually is. It's, more than just feeling stressed out or having a rough day at work.
Yeah.
Laurie Santos actually describes it as a clinical syndrome with 3 distinct symptoms.
Oh, wow. So this isn't just, I need an extra shot of espresso
No.
in the morning type of thing.
No, it's a little bit more serious than that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can think of it as emotional exhaustion,
Okay.
depersonalization or cynicism, and a sense of ineffectiveness or a lack of accomplishment.
Okay.
So let's kind of unpack each of those a little bit.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Starting with emotional exhaustion, we're talking about.
Huh.
Feeling completely drained, emotionally spent, like you just can't handle one more thing.
Wow.
And, even if you get a full night's sleep, you still wake up feeling emotionally overloaded.
It's like your emotional battery is just constantly running on empty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's depersonalization or cynicism.
Um,
And that's that feeling of being really short-fused with people,
Yeah.
especially at work.
Hmm.
You find yourself getting irritated easily
Right.
and maybe even questioning people's motives.
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
Especially when deadlines are looming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But with burnout, this cynicism becomes kind of persistent.
Right.
It's like you're viewing everything through this really negative lens,
Interesting.
especially your interactions with colleagues.
Okay, and then the final one,
Right.
that feeling of ineffectiveness.
Yes.
Does that mean like feeling like you're just not good at your job anymore?
It can manifest that way,
Okay.
but it's more about feeling like your efforts don't really matter.
Right.
You might feel blocked by systemic issues.
Okay.
Or like your work no longer aligns with what you truly value.
Interesting.
It's like you're going through the motions,
Right.
but without that spark of purpose or joy.
So it's like a triple whammy,
Yeah.
emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and then this feeling of futility. No wonder burnout is so detrimental to our well-being. But how is this different from just plain old stress?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because stress is actually a normal
Okay.
and even healthy response
Okay.
to challenging situations.
Okay.
It's that fight or flight response
Right.
that kicks in, it gives us the energy and the focus to deal with whatever's thrown our way. The problem is when stress becomes chronic
Right.
and we don't give ourselves enough time to recover,
Okay.
that's when it can kind of spiral into burnout.
So it's like the difference between running a sprint and a marathon
Yes.
without proper training.
Yes, exactly.
You can push through the sprint, but that marathon's going to take its toll.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of marathons, one of the sources, Psych2Go,
Okay.
talks about the importance of completing the stress cycle.
Okay. The stress cycle.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I have not.
So it's this idea that when we're stressed,
Okay.
our body goes through this physiological process
Okay.
and releases all these hormones,
Like adrenaline?
exactly like cortisol and adrenaline.
Right.
And those trigger that survival response,
Gotcha.
the fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
But in order to truly recover from stress, we need to complete that cycle.
Oh, okay.
So by engaging in activities that signal to our bodies that we're safe
Okay.
and the threat has passed.
So it's not enough to just like distract ourselves
Right.
with Netflix
Exactly.
or, a bag of chips when we're feeling stressed.
Yeah, distractions can provide temporary relief,
Okay.
but they don't actually address that underlying stress response.
Interesting. Okay.
So completing the cycle involves activities that promote emotional release
Okay.
and bring our bodies back to a state of calm.
Okay. So give us some examples. What are some things that actually complete the stress cycle?
So, things like deep breathing exercises,
Okay.
mindful meditation, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones,
Yeah.
engaging in creative pursuits,
Right.
or even just taking a long hot bath.
Those all sound lovely. So it's about intentionally incorporating those restorative activities into our routine
Yes.
and not waiting for vacation
Right.
to de-stress.
Exactly. Yeah. And on that note, before we kind of dive deeper into those proactive strategies,
Okay.
I just wanted to encourage you to check out the other videos on
Okay.
our Relax and Calm Down channel
Yes.
for more tips and techniques on stress management and self-care.
Wonderful. And we'll be right back after a short break to explore what causes this burnout phenomenon in the first place.
That's good.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we've talked about how burnout is more than just having a bad day.
Right.
It's a serious problem.
It is.
But what leads to this feeling of emotional exhaustion, cynicism,
Mm-hmm.
and that feeling of ineffectiveness?
Right.
Is it simply working too much, or are there other things?
It's rarely that simple. You know, a heavy workload definitely plays a part. But
Okay.
Lori Santos actually highlights some other factors,
Yes.
like what she calls a values mismatch.
Values mismatch. What is that?
So that's when the reality of your job doesn't actually align
Okay.
with the expectations that you had when you first started, or the values that drew you to the job in the first place.
I see.
You know, she gives this great example from her own experience as a college professor.
Oh.
You know, she went into that field because she was really passionate about teaching and mentoring students.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the pandemic hit,
Mm.
the focus shifted so dramatically.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't feel aligned with her core values anymore.
So it's like you go into a job with this vision,
Right.
and then that vision gets clouded or distorted
Exactly.
by external factors.
Yeah. And that disconnect can be a major contributor to burnout.
Interesting.
Another factor is this feeling of unfairness in the workplace.
Unfairness.
Yeah. And this could be about unequal compensation,
Okay.
lack of recognition for your work,
Mm.
or just a general sense that things aren't right.
So it's not just feeling overworked,
Right.
but feeling undervalued or even disrespected.
Exactly. And this can actually lead to a breakdown of community at work
Okay.
because, you know, that sense of belonging and mutual support is so crucial.
It's like the difference between working on a team where everybody has each other's backs
Yes.
and a cutthroat environment where it's every man for themselves.
Exactly. And when that community is missing, it creates this breeding ground for stress and burnout.
Right. And then the final thing is the intrinsic reward
Yes.
in our work.
Yeah. So when we feel like our jobs are solely focused on those external rewards,
Okay.
like money or
Yeah.
status, but it lacks a sense of personal fulfillment that can also lead to burnout.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where our work is challenging,
Yeah.
but also rewarding on a deeper level.
Exactly.
What happens when we get so caught up in the daily grind that we neglect our own basic needs?
That's another piece of this puzzle.
Okay.
You know, Psych to Go emphasizes the importance of self-care
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, reminding us that we can't pour from an empty cup.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So self-care isn't just about bubble baths and face masks.
No.
It's really about meeting our fundamental needs to function.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the most fundamental needs is sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah. You know, we often sacrifice sleep when we're stressed or overwhelmed,
Oh, for sure.
but that just makes the problem worse.
Right.
Because good sleep is essential for regulating our mood,
Mhm.
boosting our cognitive function,
Oh, yeah.
and building resilience to stress.
So we can't just catch up on sleep on the weekends.
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Consistent quality sleep is what's essential
Gotcha.
for our well-being, and it's not just about sleep.
Okay.
Resilient roots. Psychotherapy talks about the importance of nourishing our bodies
Okay.
with a healthy diet and regular exercise.
So this is all starting to sound familiar.
Yeah.
You know, eat well, sleep well, exercise.
Right.
It's like what our parents have been telling us forever.
It's classic advice for a reason
Yeah.
because these basic habits are the foundation
Okay.
of our physical and mental well-being.
Okay.
And they equip us with the energy and resilience we need to handle the ups and downs of life, including the challenges of work.
So it's like investing in our well-being so we have the resources to handle whatever comes our way.
Exactly.
But what about those times when it feels like everything is too much?
Mm-hmm.
When we're already feeling burned out?
That's where those practical strategies for creating a better work-life balance come in.
Okay, let's talk about that because
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to understand what causes burnout,
Right.
but it's a whole other thing to actually prevent it or recover from it.
Right. And luckily, our sources offer a ton of actionable advice.
Wonderful.
And one key theme that emerges is the importance of setting boundaries.
Well, boundaries.
Yeah.
This is something I struggle with personally.
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy to get caught up in the always on culture,
Yeah,
and feel like we need to be available 24/7.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And Insightful emphasizes the importance of setting clear work hours
Okay.
and sticking to them as much as possible. So creating a clear boundary between our professional and personal lives,
Right.
even if that means turning off those work notifications after hours.
Oh, I love that. Creating those digital boundaries
Yeah.
to protect our personal time.
Yeah, what other practical tips do we have for setting boundaries?
Yeah. What else can we do?
Well, Adaya Klava Atanasova.
Okay.
She writes a lot about burnout and work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
She suggests creating device-free zones in your home.
Oh.
So this could be your bedroom, your dining room table,
Mm-hmm.
even just a comfy chair where you go to unwind.
I love that.
The key is to have designated spaces where technology is off limits.
So we can truly recharge.
Exactly. It's like creating a sanctuary for your mind
Yeah.
to escape that constant digital stimulation.
And it's not just about those physical boundaries.
Right.
It's about learning to say no
Yes.
to extra tasks or commitments.
Yes. Especially when you're already feeling stretched thin.
That's a tough one,
It is.
especially for people pleasers like myself. Any advice on how to politely decline without feeling guilty
Yeah.
or jeopardizing our careers?
Well, it's about prioritizing your well-being
Okay.
and recognizing that you can't be everything to everyone.
Right.
Pushfar actually suggests framing your response in a way that emphasizes your commitment
Okay.
to your existing responsibilities.
Gotcha.
You could say something like, I'd love to help,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm currently focused on this key project or, this deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can revisit this once I have more bandwidth.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
So it's about being assertive but respectful.
right.
And it's a good reminder that setting boundaries is a sign of strength,
Exactly.
not weakness.
Yes.
And speaking of strength,
Yes.
another crucial part of combating burnout is prioritizing self-care.
Let's dive into that.
Okay.
Because, self-care is often presented as a solution,
Yeah,
but it can feel vague.
it can.
What does it actually look like to prevent and recover from burnout? Yeah, well, it's about engaging in activities that nourish your mind, body, and soul.
Okay.
It's like a holistic approach to well-being.
I like that.
And Pushfar recommends scheduling time for activities that bring you joy and relaxation.
Okay.
Whether that's spending time in nature,
Mm-hmm.
pursuing creative hobbies,
Right.
listening to music,
Yeah.
or just taking a few minutes each day to meditate or practice gratitude.
It's about actively incorporating those things into our lives,
Yes,
not waiting for them to magically appear.
exactly. And those small acts of self-care can make a huge difference in our overall well-being and
Yeah.
our ability to handle stress.
I'm feeling more relaxed just thinking about it.
Me too.
And before we move on to even more strategies for combating burnout,
Okay.
I wanted to remind our listeners to check out the other videos
Yes.
on our Relax and Calm Down channel for more tips and insights
Absolutely.
on self-care and stress management.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we'll be right back to explore some mindset shifts that can help us navigate the challenges of work life.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground, talking about symptoms of burnout, common causes.
Right.
We even got into some practical strategies for setting boundaries and, taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, self-care.
Yeah. But I want to kind of zoom out a little bit
Okay.
and talk about those bigger picture issues.
Okay.
Is there anything we can do about those systemic factors that contribute to burnout?
That's a really important question because you're right. Individual action is only part of the solution.
Right.
Laurie Santos actually emphasizes the role that organizations play
Oh, interesting.
in creating a work culture that either fuels or prevents burnout.
So it's not just about us as employees taking responsibility for our own well-being.
It's not just us.
Companies need to step up too.
Absolutely. They have a huge role to play.
Okay, so what can companies do?
Well, she suggests that organizations need to really take a look at workloads
Okay.
and how they're distributed among employees.
Mhm.
Are people consistently being asked to do more with less?
Right.
Are there unrealistic expectations
Yeah,
in terms of deadlines and deliverables?
that makes sense.
These are the kinds of questions that companies need to be asking themselves.
So creating a more sustainable work environment
Exactly.
where people don't constantly feel overwhelmed and pressured.
Yeah, I like that.
What else?
Well, remember those values mismatches we talked about?
Yeah.
Organizations can actually address those too.
How
They
now?
need to be transparent about their goals and their values and make sure that those values are reflected in the day-to-day work experience.
I imagine when employees feel like their work has meaning, it's part of a larger purpose.
Right.
that they're going to be more engaged and motivated
Absolutely.
and less likely to experience burnout.
Exactly. And, beyond that,
Yeah.
there's another layer we need to consider,
Okay.
and that's systemic inequalities.
Okay, systemic inequalities, what do you mean?
Well, the BBC article we talked about earlier
Right.
highlights how certain groups,
Mhm.
like women and minorities, okay,
Often face a heavier burden when it comes to burnout.
right,
And this is because they may be facing additional stressors
yeah.
related to gender bias,
hmm
lack of diversity, and unequal opportunities.
So it's like these systemic inequalities create an extra layer of pressure and stress,
Exactly.
making certain groups more vulnerable to burnout.
Exactly. So it's crucial for organizations to be really proactive in addressing these issues.
So important.
This means creating a more equitable and inclusive workplace
Right.
where all employees feel valued, respected, and supported.
This is a great point because it really emphasizes how burnout isn't just an individual problem,
It's not.
it's a societal problem.
It is.
And the solutions need to address both.
I agree it's multifaceted.
Right.
And it requires a multifaceted approach.
So we need to be equipped with the tools and strategies to manage our own stress,
Yes.
set healthy boundaries,
Mm,
but also advocate for workplaces
Right.
that prioritize well-being
exactly.
and create a culture of support. It's about individual empowerment and systemic change.
Right.
They kind of go hand in hand.
Imagine a world where people feel valued
Right.
and supported and inspired by their work,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not having to sacrifice their well-being.
That's the vision.
That's the goal, right?
That's what we should be striving for.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on burnout and work-life balance,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that burnout is not inevitable.
Okay.
It's serious, but it's not a life sentence.
Right.
There are things we can do
Mm,
to prevent it both individually and collectively.
right.
So we need to prioritize our well-being,
Yeah.
set healthy boundaries,
Mhm.
and cultivate those supportive work environments.
It's about taking ownership of our own well-being,
Yes,
but also, pushing for a more humane and sustainable work culture.
exactly. And before we sign off,
Yes.
I wanted to remind our listeners to check out the other videos on our Relax and Calm Down channel
Great reminder.
for more tips on mental well-being and self-care.
Lots of great resources out there.
We've got a lot of topics to help you thrive both personally and professionally.
And a final thought for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
How can you incorporate even small changes
Yeah.
into your daily routine
Right.
to improve your work-life balance and prevent burnout?
Yeah, maybe it's starting each day with a few minutes of meditation,
Right.
setting aside time for a hobby,
Yeah.
or just disconnecting from work emails after a certain hour.
The small steps can make a big difference.
Every little bit counts. And remember,
Yeah,
you are worthy of care and happiness.
absolutely.
Don't wait for burnout to strike before you take action.
Right.
Start investing in your well-being today.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into burnout and work-life balance.
Of course.
We hope you found it informative and empowering.
We did too. And remember, take care of yourselves.
You deserve it. Thanks for listening, everyone.